What are some of the creative and digital marketing trends that influence both brands and society? There's no better person to ask this other than the Executive Director of IAB South Africa, Chris Borain, who is also a board member of the Advertising Regulatory Board of South Africa. We talk about some of the emerging trends in award-winning work at the Bookmark Awards and other shows globally.
If your campaigns aren't integrated, if you are in silos still, I think that campaign is dead in the water.
He shares the effects of AI on agency billings, growth, and creativity.
Brands are coming in and saying, well, with the advent of AI, you need to start reducing my costs because you're utilizing AI as opposed to utilizing people. So give me a 40% reduction in my overall ad budget. What's happening with that, though, and this has been happening for a long time, is you're getting this hollowing out of ad agencies.
We also discuss podcast regulation, whether there are too many creative industry awards out there, and how we can collaborate to improve the creative industry from media to content. For more thought-provoking conversations like this one, please hit subscribe, do the thing, and share this episode with your network. If you want to support our work, please find the link in the description below and buy us a coffee. This is The Lead Creative with me, Maishe Mo Afrika. Welcome to the Lead Creative Podcast, where we talk to creative industry leaders, influencers, and brands. We discuss the strategies that influence brand thinking and shape industries. Thought leaders and heads of agencies let us in on some of their thinking and insights. I'm your host, Maishe Mo Afrika. Enjoy the show, and please share and subscribe. Chris, thanks so much for making time to talk to us almost fresh out of the 2025 Bookmarks. How has it been since? I mean, I know it's a marathon getting to the Bookmark Awards, and then it comes, and then what happens?
So the Bookmarks actually is probably the culmination of about 10 or 11 months worth of work. So we start now, and then we finish up. Yeah, we start probably in the first or second week in September, and we run all the way through to now. We have about a week or two's break, and then we start from scratch again. So it's pretty much a full year program. And as these things always go, the end of the award ceremony is always there's this low that you get afterwards because there's been such a build up to it. So it's been good having a little bit of a break, and it's funny not seeing the Bookmarks team because I normally speak to them. We have a big meeting once a week, and then we are in touch with each other constantly. So we need to step up again. We're having a strategy session mid-month again to make sure that, or mid-September, just to make sure that we are on speed again. Ready for next year.
Yeah, it's fascinating, I suppose, to get that behind the scenes look of how long it takes and how much goes into it, because we see the awards and we talk about the awards for the next 3 or 6 months and then it's done. But actually it's a year's worth of work, talking to sponsors, doing all of these things. It doesn't, for the outsider, you don't know how much goes into it. And it's fascinating to hear that. You've been on the board of the IAB board for 8 or so years. What have you observed over the past 8 years in terms of how the industry has evolved through creativity and creative effectiveness? Because especially creative effectiveness, which has become a hot topic, and we'll talk a bit about it, but what are some of the trends that you've observed over the past 8 years?
So what's interesting with the IAB is we've got a measurement dashboard which has a look at all the publisher stats, but a lot of that is just the vanity metrics, the things like page views, page impressions, and the things that allow publishers to say we this big or we this small. And not that they've never looked at it, but it's never really been a key metric, certainly from an IAB side, where we've looked at ad effectiveness. And because it's always so difficult when you look at the way that ads are bought in the South African environment, and in fact in the international environment. Most of it is bought programmatically, and it's just thrown onto sites where there's little or very little looking at actual ad effectiveness. All that they're really showing, all that's really being bought, is just an ad in a location. So to me, I mean, it's critical that we start working closer together, and I think it's always important, particularly coming out this time, when you look at an ad and how it works from a Bookmarks perspective, and the effectiveness and the creativity of that, or the effectiveness of the creativity, but aligning that with the effectiveness of, an ad is there to do a job. Actually, it's there to sell a product. It's not just there to look pretty on somebody's website, on somebody's TV network, on someone's radio network. It's there to do a job for a particular brand. And if you are making fantastic ads that win awards, yeah, great. You can put up the bookmark in your lobby as you walk in. But to me, ultimately, what we've always got to be getting back to is whether that ad is effective. And the ad effectiveness is down to a whole lot of things, not just the creative itself, but it's also the location, the context, how it's targeted, who it's targeted to, what medium they're using. Is it on your cell phone? Is it a podcast? Is it audio streaming? Is it on YouTube? Whatever that looks like. So I think it's interesting to look at the how the industry is moving in terms of people coming into the media agency perspective, where they start, who they're learning from in terms of making sure that campaigns are being bought and planned in the correct way. And I think, there's a lot of change going through the South African industry at the moment. So we're going to be going, we can talk about how long I've been with IAB, but it's all changing again. As of Group M changing everything that they do a month ago, and what that looks like from a local perspective. Everything's in a state of flux.
Programmatic advertising that you mentioned, I think I want to pick up a little bit on that, because I remember, I think if memory serves for me, it was about 5 or 6 years ago when I started really paying attention to it. It might have been there for a lot longer, of course, where there were a lot of conversations around, I kind of know what I'm buying, but I don't know what I'm buying, in the sense that if you're buying on one of the big services, one of the big sort of channels, you know that you're buying ad space, but you don't know where it'll be placed in terms of which shows it'll be placed against, what times it'll be placed for, because it's all programmatic. And now with the rise of AI within the programmatic space, what changes are you seeing and what conversations are being had, also from a measurement perspective, because you mentioned measurement as well. So how does that play in? So taking this picture of programmatic buying and measurements within the space of making the ads as well effective.
So, it's become even more fragmented and even worse, because on a programmatic, when it buys, and let's say 90% of I'm going to use the word display, but it's the same from a podcasting perspective. When you just talk about an ad that gets played, a 30-second audio ad going into podcast. So from a programmatic perspective, what we're finding in the research that we're finding locally is that you're going to a network. You're buying a network buy. You have no idea where it's going to and what's happening in the background. And this is going to get worse with the increased utilization of AI, both from an audio, video, and display perspective, is that websites can be created on the fly. Literally pick up a trending topic. Let's create a website that focuses on that. Let's create a podcast that does that. That's, use particular video technique to create something on YouTube. So literally we can be creating content on the fly that has no real resonance with audience, but all of a sudden pops up onto the programmatic network and it gets part of the buy. What we're finding locally, and if if we look at, and I'm going to use a number of 100 for rather than any direct correlation to spend, but for every 100 Rand that is spent on programmatic, we're probably seeing about 2/3 of that is just being bought blind into networks. And that is then going into this AI space or into the space where websites are created, they're either made for advertising. So whether it's a podcast, whether it's a vodcast, whether it's a display web, they're made for advertising. They're made to attract those ad dollars. They get it up. In some instances, the effectiveness is almost zero. But just the nature of programmatic buying means that that 60% of it is wasted. Where it's actually, which is, that's the education bit that we need to do from an industry perspective, to try and go back to basics. It used to be easy. You had a TV show and you knew that everybody was going to be watching, a football match or Generations or a news broadcast. With radio, it is the same. People would be driving to work and listening in the morning and in the afternoon and during. So you kind of knew where to be placing things. With digital in particular, people are accessing 24/7. So your context becomes more and more relevant. And with the increasing advent of AI to create content, but also to then buy that same content, you've got the same systems creating and buying at the same time. Ad effectiveness starts failing. Rarely it does.
Over the years, do you think creative effectiveness is changing, or that the definition of what creative effectiveness is? Are judges in particular at shows like the Bookmarks and even on the IAB as well, globally, looking more for purpose-driven work, or is it still purely innovation? Like where's the leaning towards in terms
when you
of
say purpose-driven?
How we view? So let me use South Africa as an example. What the challenges that we're facing in South Africa, a lot of the time work will be driven by what insight you're seeing in what's happening in society for a brand, right? Sometimes that is sometimes indexed quite a bit. I mean, I saw some of the work, for instance, some of the work at the Bookmarks, and one of the brands that won big, KFC, for instance, had that PFC, KFC kind of work. Are we seeing a lot of that? And in some instances, it's really about challenges that society is facing. I know that I think it was for Amnesty International where Joe Public did some work as well, and that work kind of won something. So are judges leaning more towards work that kind of serves a certain purpose or leans into a certain societal insight more, or is it where that purpose meets innovation that judges are kind of leaning towards? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's where the two of them meet, actually, because if you look at last year's Bookmark Awards, the Ricky Rick campaign won Ad of the Year, Campaign of the Year, and that was all based around his suicide, taking bits and pieces of his tweets over the last 5 to 7 years, making an ad off the back of that, using AI to mimic his voice and to make a song, which then got played out. So, but it was for a purpose in a way, and I think what you're finding is that in an ad agency, that there's such a lot of work that just gets pushed out, where there's little or no movement for creativity. So there's a 30-second TVC that needs to be created. We're pushing price and product, and off we go. And when there's an opportunity to be doing something that is for purpose, the ad agencies themselves or the people feel that there's something of value. And so potentially they get more time to work at it. They are able to flex a little bit more and use more of the innovative tools that are out there to go, we can create an ad doing this. Let's get into a boardroom and spitball for an hour or 2 hours or a day and come up with the most innovative campaign that we can using the most innovative new technology we can. And because it's for purpose, not necessarily only strictly speaking to move price and product, they're able to then take that and go, let's run with this. And I think it's probably the last 2 years, there's a lot of that intersection happening. I don't think it's, agencies themselves going, we are going to focus on that. It's just when that opportunity arises, they're then able to really lick their lips and go, let's dive into this in the biggest way possible. Let's make something as innovative as you can, because that's what gets out. I mean, one of the campaigns this year, one of the award-winning campaigns, that is a financial services company using comedians going out and doing stand-up comic shows, but all about financial education.
Yes, I remember that, the Sanlam work.
There's an issue of financial literacy in South Africa, where we see it in the fact that the online gambling industry is is worth over R1 trillion. So there's this issue around financial literacy, how to spend money, how to budget, what you should be doing, how much you should be putting away for a rainy day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How do we use what we've got available? Let's create stand-up comics, or not create stand-up comics, but let's create shows using stand-up comics to go and educate people around financial literacy. Fantastic. So it's all about using what you've got to drive a particular message.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. Digital marketing is evolving quite rapidly in South Africa and beyond, all over the world, of course. Have you noticed any shifts behind the scenes in the types of campaigns that get shortlisted and win? Are there any trends that you are seeing as digital evolves?
I wouldn't say, it is always so interesting to look at, because the Bookmarks is judged by over 120 people. So we have a really big group of judges coming in. So we have probably, let's say, 8 or 9 categories. And then that gets split down all the way, and we get nominations for jury chairs and then for jurors to sit on the panels. And that changes every single year. So there's, in some instances, there is consistency. So you might have a jury chair who's been there for the last 2 or 3 years, but by and large, I would say 60% of the actual panels change year on year. So I wouldn't say there's a natural trend to be going and saying, well, we think digital is evolving. Everybody looks at it in their own way, and tries to make a judgment call based on where they think it's most effective. Because we purely digital, and because we also have, both publishers, media buying agencies, and creative agencies all sitting in one melting pot. It's interesting to see what comes out at the end of the day. And it's interesting to look at how some panels are terribly lenient. One of the judging panels that we gave everybody incredibly good scores. And when you unpack that, you actually have got to go in and go, I'm glad you think everything's effective. It's not, firstly. Let's pick the 2 that are really standout and interrogate it and make them think a little bit harder about what was the one that stood out. Because a lot of time, because we've got this, I wouldn't say churn, but because we've got new judges coming in all the time, the way they look at it, the way they think about, whether it's creative effectiveness, whether it's planning effectiveness, or whether it's use of media, you've got to have that consistency across year. And sometimes we just need to pull things down and go, okay, not everything's brilliant. Showcase the stuff that's really fantastic. And it's all really about, it's creative excellence, but ultimately what we want to do is showcase digital as an advertising medium. When I started, the first award I went to, I think was in 2013. And digital was like a little baby still. We maybe made up 2 or 3% of total advertising spend. It's now sitting at between 45 and 50. there's this massive shift towards using digital channels, and there has been this massive shift towards using digital channels. And in that, it's less about just use us because we're great. Now it's almost show us the best piece of work you do, but let's make sure that the best piece of work you do actually drives results, whatever they may be. But it has to start driving, and you have to show that it's driving results.
It's no secret that South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world, and that inequality shows itself most visibly in schools, especially in townships and rural areas. That's why, as the lead creative, we are proud to collaborate with Threads for Ikasi, a foundation whose cause is close to our hearts. They provide school uniforms, dignity packs, and other essential items to children in under-resourced communities, helping them go to school feeling confident, with pride and dignity. On this show, we talk about how creativity and brands shape the world. Threads for Ikasi does exactly that, shaping futures one child at a time. Because when a child walks into a classroom feeling confident, it changes everything. It changes how they view themselves, how they learn, and it transforms how they imagine what's possible. These are future leaders, future creatives, and future agents of change. To help them show up as their best selves, visit threadsforikasi.org and sponsor a child today. Let's help them where it matters most. Check the link in the description and sponsor a child. Enjoy the rest of this episode. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the change over the past sort of 12 years, I guess, of you seeing work at the Bookmarks and attending the Bookmarks as well, because it's become a lot more integrated since then, and a lot more work has become digital first now, as opposed to, I don't like using the word traditional, but for the sake of this, let's say traditional advertising first. Are you seeing a lot of this? Are you seeing a lot more of this integration over the years? And what stood out about 2025 specifically?
I think it's always interesting to look back, and I'm going to go back to last year again. Any campaign that uses digital solely is bound to fail, because people don't access media in a way that is, it's not that I'm not watching TV or YouTube, or that I'm not listening to a traditional radio, or that I'm South Africa's got a really big radio listening population. It's like 75 to 80% of them are still listening to traditional radio, whereas in the European and more, I'm not going to say developed, in the European and US markets, people have kind of skipped off radio and they're streaming audio more than we do here. Anybody looking at a campaign now has to use every single touch point. You can't just create something for digital only. There has to be an element of somebody's going to read it, because they do. People are getting into public transport and reading stuff in the morning. Or they're watching stuff while they're sitting there, depending on data and how cheap data is, or they're listening to their radio station. They then are accessing social media. So you need to be the various creative elements within that social media platform. You have to use that best. There's still then, you're driving past a billboard, or you're going to a shopping center and you see a point of sale display, or you see a big, huge video display, digital out of home that's in a shopping center. And then you go back home and you watch TV. So there's this constant barrage of different media types. And you need to be on all of them. And a lot of them are now, you should be creating one particular platform, one particular campaign, but using it across all the various platforms and having that golden thread all the way through. And I think if your campaigns aren't integrated, if you are in silos still, you really, I think that campaign is dead in the water.
It's so a lot of interesting questions come up for me when you mention this, because we mentioned measurement earlier, and I want to kind of take it back to that, because while a campaign is integrated, for the bookmarks specifically, you measure for specific things, right? We look at, I suppose, the digital component of that campaign. So what are you then seeing, or what would you maybe say to agencies or creatives or people creating work that, while digitally facing or digitally led, how do the other touch points help or support or become part of the digital component to then lead to ending up on the bookmark stage?
So the key criteria that we've got in all of it is this effectiveness of the ad campaign that you do. The bookmarks is funny in that a lot of it is relies on when the people put in their entry, and they have a great video at the end of it showcasing the entry that they've done and its effectiveness. And what we keep on needing to show the jurors is that it's not just about that video that everybody's creating at the end that makes the ad campaign really good. They've got to go back to, it looks like this. Ultimately, there are a number of key success factors within every campaign. Yes, it's got to look good. Yes, it's got to have lots of downloads. People have got to be watching it. There's got to be recall. But what does that look like in terms of, so is it digital downloads, or is it people are wanting social media interactions, they're wanting goods to fly out of the store? What exactly are the ultimate goals that the client wants to get? And then how have the entrants, the agencies, when they put together that entrant, how have they highlighted those to go, we needed to do this and we've done that? Yes, you're always going to be selective in the criteria that you show, but it's then up to the individual jurist to understand it and go, it's not just about creating, pretty pictures or a great 30-second ad. It's all got to be about effectiveness. That's what's always driven digital, is the fact that we're able to take people down the funnel to the last mile. But it's all about that ad effectiveness, and ad effectiveness is brought back into the criteria for how we judge. And effectiveness mean, what those campaign goals are ultimately. But it's all about making sure that the two merge, so that when that final decision gets taken to go, this is a great campaign or not, you're looking at that, not just what the advertising agency or the publisher is putting in as their entry. That looks fantastic. And that particular, you've got to put in a 2 or 3 minute video in there showcasing your ad. It's not just about that 2 or 3 minute video. It's all about all the work that goes in the background, making sure that the KPIs are met and that the juror is actually seeing that. So yes, it's great. People go in and they put a lot of work into their entries, but it's not just about the entry. It's about what the campaign does for the client.
So that's difficult, very difficult, I guess, in reality, especially in a reality where a brand will use 2 different agencies for different types of work. Like the digital sometimes falls with one agency and other forms of communication and advertising fall within a different agency a lot of the time. And sometimes this golden thread or this communication between the agencies and the brand becomes slightly broken. How do you then measure you don't measure for that, but I suppose it's just a question about then how should agencies and brands be thinking about finding this, finding each other to create that golden thread, to create that kind of effective work that exists, especially in instances where the work falls within 2 separate agencies?
That's always going to be tricky. I think from a brand perspective, if digital is still treated, and this is then a legacy thing, but if digital is still treated as a I kind of have to buy it, that I don't really know what I'm doing, and I really prefer seeing my face on a billboard or seeing, my goods in a newspaper when they get dropped off. Then the brand isn't doing itself justice. What every campaign needs to be doing, and that then gets back to brand. They should be looking at digital as part of the overall pie, and then when they're slicing that up, if they've got different, if they've got a digital creative house and they've got a above the line creative house and they've got an out of home creative house, if they're not getting them into a room and going, guys, this is what it looks like, and this is what we need to do together, and this is how we showcase our brand out into the market, and this is that golden thread that ties them together, they're the ones that are going to end up losing, and they're going to be wasting money. And I think a lot of it, getting back to the original one of the conversations we had about programmatic, what happens then is people go, I'm allocating 30% of my budget to buying programmatic digital advertising. I don't care where it gets to, just come back with the fact that you spent 30% of this budget on programmatic. They're not taking time to actually understand what they need to do, particularly if one looks at the fact that digital now makes up 50% of your budget. Guys, if it's 50% of your budget, you need to make sure that when you are looking at where it's being placed, where your ad is going, who's reading it, are you comfortable with? I mean, I heard a complete anecdote on the side, and there's no ways I can prove this, but one of our telcos, they were talking about, or the ad agency involved in there was going, well, the telco's quite happy on one side to say we here for family values and we do this and we do that. And then on the other side, they're quite comfortable to go, a lot of our audience is streaming porn, and so we need to be there because people will be buying data to stream porn. So we're going to be in there, and that really doesn't make any difference to us because ultimately we just want to sell data. You can't live in both those worlds. If you're going to be saying, we are buying for effectiveness and we're buying for data, perfect, go for it. But don't lecture anybody on the side about family values. Go in and say, this is what our ad campaign looks like. This is what we're going to do. And we want to reach the right audiences in the right place at the right time. If you decide that happens to be in a porn site, good for you. Understand how that impacts on your brand ultimately. But don't just throw stuff into the mix. Actually actively plan where your programmatic spend goes. And if you don't, I think you're wasting money.
So one of the things, I'm going to go back a little bit to last year again. So at the Loeries, we saw only one Grand Prix awarded, and this, as memory serves, was for brand identity. Do you think that this kind of thing reflects a higher standard of judging, or is it a sign that the industry needs to push the bar a bit more? I think there were, I can't remember the Bookmarks, but I do know that there was this one year where a lot of I suppose brands were awarded work. It wasn't last year. I think it might have been the year before, the year prior to that. But I think coming out of COVID, the industry, I think, was pushing the bar quite a lot more. And then last year, things seemed to have stepped back a bit. South Africa didn't bring back that many wins from Cannes, for instance. And there was only one Grand Prix awarded at the Loeries. What does this say about how much the industry is pushing the bar creatively?
I think South African industry, like everything else, is going through its own particular tests and challenges at the moment. I went to the WPP have an event, Stream, which they have once a year, where a whole lot of people get around and they talk, just ad stuff for 2 or 3 days. And one of the things that was brought up a lot is the fact of, because agencies' costs are being driven to such a degree by the brands themselves, or by, which is fair. People are trying to bring costs down. I know that brands are coming in and saying, well, with the advent of AI, you need to start reducing my costs. because you're utilizing AI as opposed to utilizing people. So give me a 40% reduction in my overall ad budget. What's happening with that, though, and this has been happening for a long time, is you're getting this hollowing out of ad agencies, in that you've got a whole crop of youngsters coming out of Red and Yellow and Vega coming in without necessarily, it's like any university. When people are coming out of university, they fit to work, but not fit for work, if that makes sense. There's still some on-the-job training that needs to happen from a creative perspective, from a buying perspective, from everything. And because there's this there's a hollowing out in the middle of agencies, both creative and media buying, and a few people at the top who are being picked off to go overseas by and large as well. I mean, we've had an exodus of great talent over the last 4 or 5 years. And now with consolidation happening at a greater level internationally and impacting on South Africa, the ad agency model as it currently sits is in trouble. And I think that then leads to, in some instances, a lack of pushing the boundaries, because you don't have that mentorship going, this is what works, this is how we can test it, this is what we can do. It's not only about the latest and the greatest, shiniest thing. It's let's do the following because we know it's worked over the last 5 or 10 years. And that hollowing out means less about that. And so we see that lack of Grand Prix coming back. And I think from an ad agency perspective locally, I think, and I've heard a lot of the CEOs of ad agencies saying, so I'm hoping I'm not putting my foot in it, but they worried about the work that comes out, because of that hollowing out. So I think we need to go back and reflect on all sorts of things. But if we want to be back out there, South Africa used to be perceived as, absolute first class work, award-winning work on an international stage. We've seen that diminish slightly, and it's that hollowing out to my mind. And it's not going to get easier. It's going to get harder with clients pushing back on budget, AI being able to create, 100,000 bits of creative, where it would have taken a creative team a month to do that.
Has that trend of brands paying agencies less, wanting to pay agencies less because of the use of AI, or brands utilizing AI quite a bit, hit South Africa as yet? Because I've read about it internationally, but I'm not sure what's happening in boardrooms locally.
So I sat in an AI conference in Cape Town 2 weeks ago, and a couple of the people who were talking at this AI conference, and it was cross industry, and there was a particular vertical for the creative industry. And the guys there, and I'd heard that in other discussions that I've had, where clients are coming back and saying, we understand you're using AI to do the following. On a line-by-line basis, I want you to have a look at your budget of 100,000 Rand and give me the savings brought to you by AI. I want to see it on a line-by-line basis, and then come back with what your new costs are going to be. And that has a big impact on the South African advertising industry, because you can. I was at a show in Dubai earlier this year, and it's a radio sales show. So understand that. But what they're wanting to do is showcase how quickly they can create creative for a SME type business. So an SME type business doesn't necessarily have huge budgets that they can go out and create these fancy radio adverts. But what AI allows you to do is to scrape people's websites, to voice it in a particular way. And literally, as a client would walk in and say, give me 5 different bits of creative, it would spit it out. Literally within 5 minutes. So we're going to see that taking place more and more and more and more.
That's interesting. Also scary as well, because because I suppose agencies have been saying that or at least there's this debate, rather, around agencies saying or believing that the model that brands are paying them on, or the models that are kind of working at the moment don't really work for agencies, paying for time or to paying for hours and things like that. So now, I suppose wanting discounts or wanting work to be cheaper because people are using AI, a tool that doesn't necessarily mean people don't think, will make it even harder in the industry. So that's an interesting debate to kind of keep an eye on.
It's going to hollow out the ad industry locally. It really will, because what are the words that we use? The ad agencies are in the business of creating media assets. That's their job, And if you can get AI to create it, to come up with a concept, to execute, to do the media planning, and to by and large record it, you can create, incredible bits of video that you can put into a 30-second TVC. You can do that in a fraction of time and a fraction of the cost. And then, all of a sudden, from a headcount perspective, you go from having 50 people down to 5, because you just need prompt engineers as opposed to creative people, because you're not actually doing the thinking anymore. So, and for a smaller client, or a client that is rigorously focused on cost. So just look at, the big brands, the Unilevers, the Coca-Colas, the SABs, etc., where the way they increase their profitability is by squeezing margin every year. If you can reduce your advertising cost by 20% because you're utilizing AI as opposed to using human beings to create your assets, that's how you make more. That's the shareholder value equation. And so that's going to have a bigger impact at that level. And then if I'm an SME, if I can walk in somewhere and go, give me a 30-second TVC or a piece of social media or a video, a digital display ad. I need it to say the following, create it for me, chuck it into an AI prompt engine, and it does it. All of a sudden, I'm saving costs. Whereas, so there is going to be a relentless squeeze on advertising agencies, and we've got to, from a Bookmarks perspective, from an industry perspective, make sure that we are working with the advertising industry to make sure that they're more relevant rather than less relevant. That the work that they do is judged accordingly, and that we reward excellence in an agency. So you can utilize AI tools, but come up with something that nobody's done before. Showcase stuff, use it in a way that drives results, not just, if you're going to have just a run-of-the-mill campaign, you're going to get a run-of-the-mill bookmarks. If you are actually utilizing all the bits in your agency, you're going to create work that resonates.
Now, two things come up for me when you say that. I think the first thing is that one of the marketing directors we spoke to early on in the rise of generative AI as we've come to know it, Sichaba Mutielwa, said that I don't pay you, my agency, for what AI can do. I pay you for the creativity, for the thinking, for the depth that you provide in the work that you give, right? So that's one side of it. The other side of it that's coming up, and I've seen some AI work actually, and we're able to tell for now what AI work looks like. As AI evolves, we probably won't be able to tell. Now, the other side of it for me is the level of creativity that AI brings to the table, because humans bring the insights, their thinking, everything else that AI cannot bring. AI brings only what it kind of knows or how well the prompt is, right? So what are you seeing from a global perspective as the IAB in terms of the level of creativity being measured for that AI is bringing versus what humans are bringing? Are we able to make that distinction yet?
Okay, so here's using AI, but ultimately brought on probably by human ingenuity. So that this combination in the middle, and it is a campaign using digital audio. So I'm going to thread the digital back into it for Corona beer in New Zealand. Okay, so what they did is they went, it's summer in New Zealand, whatever that looks like, and what we want to do is showcase the where the best surf locations are around New Zealand, because that will then encourage people to, hopefully it's summer, they can take their beers along and sit on the beach and drink some beer. So what they were doing is, from a digital audio perspective, it'd use your geolocation to then create coming up with a concept. We want to showcase summer in New Zealand to buy beer, and what we're going to do is go big on surfing. So that's the concept. Then using AI to go, let's match your location to the weather and surf conditions in that location and create an ad that gets played out and made instantaneously. As you are listening to the audio stream of the podcast in that location, it'll say, right, you are at X beach. The weather today at this hour, based on the latest weather forecasts and surf forecasts, is 30 degrees. There's an offshore wind blowing, and the waves are 3 meters high. Get out there now and go, and don't forget to take your Corona, and this surf report brought to you by. So that's using all elements of it. I think can you create that campaign just using AI? Yes, because now it will go out and just go and search the web for great campaigns that build effectiveness from a beer sales perspective. But originally, it's using a human creative thought and then using the tools that generative AI brings to the party that you can't get. You can't create 60,000 bits of creative on the fly out of an agency. It'll take forever. But using tech, you can. So I think hopefully the ad agencies look at models like that and go, what can we do? Yes, we always are going to want to have big TVCs. We're always going to want to have radio campaigns that do the following. But from a digital perspective, we can create work that has greater relevance and impact, and instantaneous relevance and impact, because we were able to go, it's winter, it's cold today, or it's going to rain today, go and buy an umbrella. Or Woolworths is having a sale on soup, or, whatever that is, and be creating assets based on conditions that utilize AI technology to help drive those creative assets. Let's do that rather than just go out and create an ad campaign for me. Think of it, plan it, buy it, off you go. I don't want to touch it. Then we're going to see a hollowing out, and then we're going to see industry awards like, the Bookmarks and the Luries just fall to the ground, because there'll be nothing there. It'll be who's a better prompt engineer. And I don't think that's really where we want to get to. I certainly don't want to get to that.
Is that though? I mean, we talk about this, I suppose, at agency level quite a lot, and we argue about it. And I think the argument is around, is it prompt engineering or is it the creative? Because prompt engineering can only go so far, creativity can go a little bit further, or is it a combination of both in terms of how the future looks? But I guess, I mean, to your point, the prompt engineering is becoming a bigger and bigger part of it.
I think it will, and as more and more graduates are coming out of the schools, having been taught to use more of it, so you'll get more of it in there. That's just the way it will be.
Sure.
I think for any person wanting to get into an ad agency now, in planning that for their future career, if they're not understanding what Gen AI can do for them and how to help them, then they're wasting their time, because somebody who is doing that is going to be 10 steps ahead of them. So, it's interesting to see where we get to. I think, personally, we're going to get the rise of smaller agencies again. I think that consolidation period is because of the fact that it's, we're consolidating even more and just cutting people at a level. All those people who are smart and senior and have good relationships in the industry are going to go out and create their own little hot shops or their own agencies. And we're going to get back to a lot of medium-sized agencies doing really great creative work. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that's the way it goes. Yeah. You know, you might always get the bigger businesses that are going, I'm relentless on costs and I don't care. I just want my advertising budget to decrease by 10% a year. But if you really want your ad spend to work for you, it's less about that cost. Yes. It's more about ad effectiveness. Yeah. And that ad effectiveness is going to be brought by creative thinking in an agency, using, you know, getting people around a table and brainstorming and coming up with great ideas from a creative perspective, from a actual execution of the brief perspective, to buying it all the way through the food chain. You're going to get more and more of that. Please, from my lips to the god of advertising's ears at the moment. That's what I really hope happens.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. Yeah, I want to switch gears a bit now, Chris. So I was fortunate enough to be there in the mid to late 2010s when the IAB was putting together white papers and some sort of regulation, and not in such a stiff sense of regulation, around influencer marketing and how influencers should almost tag the work that they're doing for brands and if it's paid and things like that. Fast forward to this year, in fact, this past month, podcasts and podcasters are landing themselves more and more and more in hot water with a lot of things that are happening within the space, many calls for the regulation of podcasts. What's the IAB's take on, firstly, regulating podcasts as a form of digital media, and what are some of the talks that are happening in the background? Because as podcasters, we also touch media, we also touch brands quite a lot. Yep. So what's being spoken about there?
So two things. There's a new government white paper out at the moment on regulation, and it's audiovisual content. And from an industry perspective, we've pushed back against government regulation for a long time, because what we feel, and you'll see it in the Press Council and the BCCSA, we're a self-regulated industry, but then we need to be self-regulated. We need to have a complaint mechanism that people go in and say, I've got a complaint about something. This is what I'm complaining about, and have a group of people sitting down and going, okay, from an industry perspective, we think this is the way it works. That costs money. Okay. From an IAB perspective, we sit on the board of the Press Council, who regulate press and, to a degree, digital content. And they struggle to sustain themselves because they rely on money from media houses to pay for their survival, and media houses are losing money. So there's this cycle of potentially those regulatory bodies falling over because they got no funding. We need that funding, and we need that funding because otherwise you're going to get to a stage where the government appoints an ombudsman who sits there, who's going to say, I can't do this post fact. If you want to talk about anything, before you push it out, you need to send it to me. I'm going to listen to it, watch it, read it. I'm going to get someone to listen, watch, read, and then I'll push it out, which is censorship. We don't want that. In any shape or form, we don't want that. So one of the South Africa's biggest podcasters, he's the CEO of the organization, wrote me a note this week going, we being regulated. And my point to him was, self-regulation is key. If you don't do this, if you don't step up and go, right, we need to create, from a podcasting perspective, something where people can go to and go, I have an issue with this. It's wrong. Nobody's got the money to take someone to court. You go out after this interview and go and say, Chris Borain is the biggest idiot who's ever known. Everything you said was crap. He should be fired, blah, 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 blah. And I want to take you for defamation of character. I need to go to court to do that. I need to be in a position where I can go to the self-regulatory board out there and go, this is what happened and here's what happened. And I want to start getting those rules in place that we know what we're talking about. The same happens with influencers. You need to show people what you're doing. You can't just pop up a product and start talking about the virtues of the latest weight loss drug. You need, because unless you're disclosing that you're being paid for it. So all those things, we've put that in place. The IB is not a regulatory body. What we do is we work with the industry to go, here we think are the standards that the industry is calling for, because we've set up a committee. So we're doing something for retail media now, okay? And retail media is then going to be, what does retail media and e-commerce look like? And we're going to get people from agencies, from the likes of Takealot and from the likes of ShopRite, and hopefully the other guys, as well as brands, as well as tech people, all sitting in a room going, what does this industry look like and how should we regulate it? The same goes with video and audio. We put out a white paper on podcasting around the time of COVID, and I think it's time to do that again. But where does that body sit? Where does that press ombud sit to go, if, I'm going to mention Mac's name again, if Mac G says the following again, who can someone complain to without me taking him to court if I feel like I'm being maligned? And it's not just Mac, it's across the board. We just need to have that space where we are self-regulated, because if we're not, we're government regulated. And if we're government regulated, we're in trouble. So from an IAB perspective, I'm working with other industry bodies to try and see how we do this. And I don't really know what the answer is, because it costs money. It costs a lot of money to run that. I mean, the Press Council's budget is in excess of millions every year, and that's got to come from somewhere. And if we load that on again and say, right, now we need to do, the Press Council needs to do video and audio, so they need another 5 million to carry on running. Okay, where's that coming from? And I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah, because we've been talking about this. I mean, I'm part of the South African Podcasters Guild, and we've been talking about this in the Guild, and these are conversations that are not just happening in South Africa, they're happening across the continent and everywhere else in the world as well.
So, yeah. So, I mean, my concern with the Guild is so the BCC or the NAB has got everybody in that pie. It's a massive, and it's got lots of funds to play with. The IAB to a lesser degree, the Press Council to a lesser degree, everybody. The Podcasters Guild should be aligning with, so what do you guys do? You're creating digital content.
Sure.
Why do you have your own body with creating your own fee structure and own infrastructure, and then you're going to have your own award ceremony? There are already too many award ceremonies in this country. Okay? We know that.
Yeah.
And I'm not pushing the bookmarks at the expense of everybody. I'm just saying there are probably 20 that sucks up sponsor money, that sucks up entry money, that sucks up everything. It's not sustainable. We need to be looking at it and going, how do we work together? Does the Podcasters Guild phone up the NAB and say, how do we work together because we should be part of this? Or do they phone up the IAB and say, we're digital, we want to be part of that? Set up a committee, let's do something. But working in isolation all the time is not the right way to go, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that and I fully understand it. There's an argument as well, I mean, to be made for the fact that all of these award ceremonies measure for different things, and there are certain things that aren't being measured for. And I suppose this debate was made about the Mark Awards, which are launching this year. In fact, I mean, tomorrow, the first of them. So the debate around that is there are certain things that aren't really being measured for in some of these awards. How do we find common ground and collaboration to make it happen?
Really?
That's part of the debate, right? Like, it's something that's out in the market that's being spoken about.
I think without impugning any awards, I look at the sheer number of them.
Yes.
And you go, okay, so let's say the Bookmarks. The Luries is the gold standard. And I'm just going to put that out. The Luries has been around for X, and it's got legacy, and it's got everything going for it. Let's say the Bookmarks, I'm going to bring that up now. We've been going for 17 years. We've got standing, we've got legacy, we've got history, and our judging criteria, we don't hand out things for the sake of it. I promise, we looked at what the judging looked like, and we went, sorry, our criteria aren't tough enough. Let's make it harder, because what we want to be rewarding is excellence. We don't want to be giving out sweeties and cookies, and awards just for being part of the industry. That's not what we do. Okay. What it sucks out of by having 20 of them is all of them cost a lot of money to put together. Okay. So you go to sponsors to get the money. So it sucks up sponsorship money the more that you have. Each agency's only got a set amount of money that it can spend on an award or on award entries and on time. So it sucks that up as well. Sucks up tickets, because agencies, brands and publishers don't have an endless budget to send people to every single award ceremony. So what you're doing, instead of getting the peak, the pick of the crop, you're getting a whole lot of blandness in the middle, which I think is the worry, actually. And it's making it more and more difficult for the ones that are really, really, the ones that should be there, so, I mean, my perspective is we need to see how we can work together, rather than going, I'm going to do this all by myself and nothing else. So I've reached out to all the awards to go, how do we do stuff together, as opposed to, are there ways that we can work together? Because we shouldn't just be doing everything in isolation. And if there are ways of doing that, let's speak about it. But just to create another awards ceremony and an awards category just for the sake of it, I think is short-sighted. You've got the Effies, which in theory do effectiveness. That's been going for a while, which from what I understand is what the Mark Awards are doing. Okay, well, why are we doing both? Why aren't the Mark Awards speaking to the Effies? Because they all, one's representing all the advertising agencies in the country. If you think there's a problem, work at it. Make sure that you get the award that comes out that looks brilliant, that reaches all these things that you say aren't being judged, rather than just doing it. We get endless amounts of people saying, work with us, please, we want to create another award. Well, no, actually.
Interesting. Yeah, a debate to be had. I mean, I have a lot of questions about that. Yeah.
I'm not knocking any of the awards. I'm just saying, let's be critical about
and collaborative
about the number of awards ceremonies we've got. Let's be critical about the number of industry bodies we have, because it costs time and money. And let's not create one for the sake of doing it. Podcasts and vodcasts are so for lack of a better word, they're either audio and video content, and then they go to the NAB, or they're audio and video digital content, and they come to the IAB. Okay? And then within that, we then go, where does this complaint mechanism sit? Because if we split ourselves out even further, we're going to get into trouble, because then all of a sudden we're going to have government regulation and go, here it is. And we're going to say, well, you should have looked after that. No, you should have looked after that. No, it fell between the cracks somewhere. Let's work at this together as an industry.
And I suppose maybe a quick sort of audit or look at what the awards that are out there are. One of the things for me as a podcaster, and this is true for many digital media creators, one of the things is, and I'm sure SMEs have said this ad nauseum, is the prohibitive cost of some of these awards to kind of compete, to put your work up on the same stage as everybody else, which is also one of the areas that makes some of this work that is self-funded, self-created, not stand up on these spaces.
I think if you're wanting to showcase, we're an industry body. We don't exist without all of our members, brands, publishers, agencies. And we work to make, we work to make things accessible and as cost effective as possible. The IAB has a sum total of 50% resources, working on it. And we rely on the industry to work with us to create stuff. So we keep our costs really low. The Bookmarks, it spends a year, of which on that committee, we have CEOs, COOs of agencies giving up their after-hours time to come and work on it because they want to do, they think they, they are wanting to do stuff for the industry, to recognize good work and build up the industry. So everything that we do, like most industry bodies, is there's a really thin layer of people who do this full time, and the rest of it is all people going, I want to build up the industry. I've been on the IAB board, I think, since 2014. Or working on the Publisher Council or working on the publisher. So I've been working, let me just say this way, I've been working with the IAB for the last 14 years in various guises, doing various things. And so some people just like doing that. I've always, I started doing this in 2002 with the Online Publishers Association. So it's always been, how do we make this bigger? How do we make this bigger for the collective in this? We grow ad spend as a collective by saying what's good for the South African industry. This is good. Standards are good. Doing trust list publishing is good. Having an award ceremony is good because it recognizes good work for the industry, because what we're wanting to do ultimately is make them all more successful. If we've got 20 of those, you never know which, is there validity in that argument, or is it just things jumping up for the sake of jumping up? And I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that I cross-sit on a whole lot of other industry boards for this collaboration perspective. Because if we aren't collaborating, if I'm not, I sit on the ARB board, which is to judge, say, if you get offended by advertising, you've got somewhere to go to from a self-regulatory perspective. I sit on the Press Council board, same thing. It's all about that, and it's all about working together. All of these boards are made up of all these various industry bodies or people working to make the industry a better place, hopefully. And I think that collaboration is more and more important as you go down the road. Just, we don't have unlimited budget. Therefore, we need to work together to be smart.
And I think there's something else that we can't exactly discuss now, which is around these other awards or things that look like awards, platforms that look like awards that keep cropping up, where you have to pay something to be awarded something which doesn't really look that authentic. And there are quite a few of those.
It's like those magazines that you can buy, which
exactly.
You can go in and say, write an article about me, but you've got to pay $2,000 to write an article
so there's
about
a lot
me.
of that we can't discuss that now.
It's not that. We want to, as a bookmark, as an IAB, the Bookmarks for us is all about recognizing and rewarding excellence. And excellence then isn't a constant.
Yes.
It fluctuates year to year based on the work that's put out. So we might look at it next year and all the work is of such a standard that we go, geez, we actually need to award 3 black pixels because they are superb. Or it might be so bad that we don't have any awards at all. Because we're actually looking at it from a judging perspective and going in and saying we want to reward excellence across the board. But let's be rigorous with our excellence, not just go in and start dishing things out because, there's a participation award here. We're not a participation award business. We think we like the lurries with that. They're very tough. We think we're really tough on making sure that we're rewarding excellence. And I think the Bookmarks will always want to continue with that. That's what we do. We reward excellence across the board. If you're bringing in new technologies and AI and all those good things, fantastic. Make sure what you're getting is you're getting a fantastic campaign that's creative, that uses incredible visual effects or digital, whatever you're doing. Make it a great campaign and make sure it's effective. Because otherwise you're doing one for the sake of, just looking pretty. It's got to be effective. And then in doing that, if we are recognizing that, I think we're doing our job and we're putting it out for people to look at and go, the Bookmarks looks like this. or a good ad campaign looks like this. And we know it's a good ad campaign because its peers judged it. Its peers at Luries or us. We've got over 100 judges. Luries does the same thing. It's not a committee of 5 awarding things.
Yeah.
It's 100 people going in and going, this is the best thing that we can do. We spent 3 months judging. There's a lot of time and effort given to it. And I think what you then get out of it is an award, the pixel at the end of it, which if you are getting that, you are achieving something. That's what we want. It needs to be striving. I walked out of this year's awards and some of the agencies and people that I know came at me and went, I spent 10 grand entering this award or whatever the number is. I got nothing. I had 10 awards. And I go, well, sorry, guy. It really is not my intention, but sorry, work harder next year, if that's the way of putting it.
Chris, we usually have a question that our past guest leaves for our next guest. And so think of this as, our previous guest passing the mic to you. And one of our previous guests was Olisa Jeshana, the Chief Creative Officer of Joe Public. And the question he left was, what do you think is holding South Africa back from truly reaching our creative potential? What do you think is holding us back from truly, truly reaching and living up to our creative potential as a country and as an industry?
I'm going to go back I'm going to look at it from an industry perspective rather than a country perspective, because I can't talk to the country. From an industry perspective, I think this relentless focus on costs actually is negative to our industry, because you're hollowing out the ability. People aren't prepared to take risks anymore in terms of creative, in terms of buying, and in terms of placement, because there's this relentless focus on undercutting what you spent last year to make sure that it's cheaper. And I think where we will do better, not that we stop focusing on it, but that we start judging ourselves on creative excellence and effectiveness, and then make sure that works, because then people are prepared to pay for it, to be fair. But we've got to be pushing that envelope all the time. If we're just going to be doing what we did, if we're going to have a look at, if I go back 4 years to the Bookmarks and go, this one won the Black Pixel and it's exactly the same as this one 5 years later, then we're standing still. We've got to be doing new and innovative work. And that comes from focusing on excellence as opposed to focusing on making sure that our costs are cut by 10% every year. Because in some instances, they can work side by side, but a lot of instances, if all we're doing is we're cutting the other at the expense of it. So, and I'm hoping that the consolidation of the international agencies leads to a whole lot of new agencies springing up, full of those creative people who are then going to be taking risks again, because they're not paying huge admin fees across to a multinational sitting in the US or the UK. They're able to go, these are our costs because it's just us. We are doing the work, and we are doing work that matters and work that is excellent. And I'm hoping that that's where we get to.
Now, Chris, it's your turn to pass the mic to our next guest.
Okay, my question is going to be
a question about the industry and life, for that matter. Yeah, what's your question?
Okay, so my question is then going to be about, I've got a publishing background, so I come from media owner perspective. I started on radio and I've worked on TV and I've worked on digital, but always from a media owner perspective as opposed to an ad agency and a creative side. So to my question would be, and I'm saying this from a media owner perspective, is how does the ad industry side, for lack of a better word, work together with local media owners to ensure their survival? Because if you look at what's happening with the share of ad spend that is being allocated offshore and leaving the country, local media is going to die. And I think it's incumbent on local media houses, local media buying houses and local creative agencies to work together with media owners to ensure their joint survival. And I want to know how your next guest plans on doing that.
Interesting, fascinating question. Chris, thank you so much. There's a lot to take out of that, from collaboration to how we elevate the quality of the work to everything between, and how awards have evolved and how brands have evolved, how communication has evolved. There's a lot to take out of that. Thank you so much for making time. And thank you for the work, amazing work that you're doing as IAB and as the Bookmarks to elevate the industry.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to The Lead Creative. Did you get one insight that's worth sharing from this episode? Please share it with your network or your friends. Pop me some of your ideas and innovative finds on Twitter on @Mongezi. This podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find me on mongezi.com.